So I take my son to a junior golf lesson. And while I'm there watching him get his lesson, it occurs to me, I think some of this stuff applies to me. So I took some notes, and when I got home, I started to work on tightening up some of my fundamentals, specifically grip, how far I stood from the ball, and my takeaway. I committed to practicing it, and it felt weird at first. But then the next time I went out, I shot 76, one of my all-time great scores. So there's something to this. So in today's video, I'm gonna break down the 3 things I focused on, and maybe it can lead to an improvement in your game too. So the first thing my son's coach suggested was to always hold the club out in front, off the ground in order to take a grip. Hold it with your trail hand kind of down on the shaft, with the toe pointed towards the sky, and then taking your lead hand and putting it on the club first, making sure, of course, that your thumb is slightly on the side of the grip, not directly on top. And then from here, just sliding your hands down, making sure that that toe doesn't really change positions, and then grip it in the fingers, keeping it nice and tight. And then now I bring it down to address the ball, and I'm just gonna put it behind the ball with the toe pointed away, and I should be all set. So the next step in this process was to make sure that I was standing the correct distance from the ball. Now to do this, we talked about posture, but assuming posture and everything was okay, Coach just said you want to make sure that you release your trail hand, and if you release and let your trail hand dangle, if it stays in the same spot, then you're the right distance from the ball. Now this was surprising to me because our coach is like my son and I. He is lead hand dominant, which means he's right-handed playing left-handed golf. And so I thought the lead hand would be more in control, and it should maybe be the one dictating the distance from the ball. But he said it's not, because you want to keep the trail hand from messing things up, so you want it in its most natural position, which upon further review does make sense. So I simply address the ball again, and to test this, I get myself in position. I just relax my hand, and yep, now I'm in the right position. Now this feels a little too close for me. It often does. But when I swing, it seems to yield some positive results. All right, so we have the grip, we have distance to the ball. And the last thing that really made a difference for my game was making sure my takeaway was sound. Now, to explain this to my son, all my coach said is pretend that there's someone standing directly behind you, and you're gonna pass them the club. And when you do so, you wanna make sure that the toe of the club is now pointed to the sky. Now I know in some golf instruction, we want maybe the toe pointed in a little bit, but again, he was trying to correct a bit of a hook that my son had. So he said toe to the sky, and you're passing it back. And at this point, then you're just gonna hinge your wrists. Now this is interesting because I find that this is most helpful when I have very little, I feel like I have very little wrist hinge to get to here. So the more I focus on not hinging my wrist to get to this point and then hinge, the more successful I seem to be. Now this has become part of my pre-shot routine. I get in my position, I do a little practice, preset there, that's where I want the club to go, and then I swing. And the last thing I'll add to this came from a tip on the last video I did, which was asking my fellow viewers to help me out with my swing. And someone suggested that I focus on my weight shift a bit more, considering it seems like I'm keeping things on the fleet foot. I thought that was a really good suggestion because as I looked at the recording, that certainly was the case. So now, as I go to pass the club back, I'm also thinking about moving the weight onto that trail foot, and then hinge, move it back to the front foot. So it's just kind of that extra thought of when I pass the club to that imaginary person behind me, I'm shifting my weight back to hand it to them, and then I shift it back forward to initiate that downswing. So I set up, make sure I'm nice and close to the ball, trail hand in about the right spot. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or found something useful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Golf Quest Army would love to have you.